All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah,
Really
absolutely,
appreciate it.
absolutely. I love the movie. It was such a fantastic film to watch. I saw it when it came out because it never had a theatrical release when I lived. So I think it
Ah,
came out in July on Disney Plus.
yes, we
Uh,
had a theatrical release, I think, in May in the selected cinemas in UK and America.
yeah, and it is cool that you guys had a theatrical release as well because it must have played really well on the big screen.
Yeah, in the big screen, I think the whole film becomes very immersive because of the sound as well, and
Mhm.
just the whole feeling of connectivity to even the audience around you.
Yeah.
I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's that collective consciousness in the cinema that you can't replicate at home, but it plays beautifully on Disney Plus as well.
Well, congratulations on your work in this incredible movie. I assume it's a great feeling to not only be able to talk about it, but also see how it continues to resonate with audiences, even months after its theatrical release.
Yeah, I am. I'm actually really proud of it. And I'm proud of everyone who's involved in it because I think Glenn Stout wrote the book, Young Woman and the Sea. Jeff Nathanson found the book and wrote the script, and he and Jerry and Joachim, they spent about 8 years, I think, bringing it to fruition. So just based on a real story about a young girl who had a dream to swim and that that she broke all the history records of swimming, and she was celebrated at that moment in time over 100 years ago, but then she's been lost to the sort of annals of history. So I feel very proud to be involved in something that actually brought her name back to the forefront and gave her the recognition she deserved.
Were you familiar at all with the story of Trudy before you joined the film?
No, I wasn't. I hadn't heard of it before. And that's why when I read the story and then heard it was based on a true story, I couldn't believe it. And that chimed with me. I have edited a few films that are based on true stories. And you always feel a responsibility as a filmmaker or film editor to do justice to those people. And so when I did Stan and Ollie, the same thing was like this celebrating the brotherhood of friendship between men. And then for Trudy Adderley, it felt like a celebration not only of her accomplishments, but also actually of her family coming from, a working class background and the relationship that she had with her sister, her mother, her father. It just felt like a really important film for all of us out there to know that if you have a dream, even if society is telling you that you can't do this, you can and you should. And with family support and love, she did it. She managed to do that. I think it's a good message for all of us. Life is short and do follow your dream.
And it's a fairly inspirational story as well, because Trudy not only had to overcome very physical challenges at an early age, but also societal challenges as well when she started swimming. What
Yeah.
struck you the most about that sort of journey that she had in her life?
Well, you know what? I'm sure we're not alone in many of us feeling you always have to sort of break the boundaries, even as a film editor. Sometimes I've done documentaries and then to get into TV drama, to get into feature film. And then when I did a feature film comedy, all the scripts were comedic and then trying to do something different. So I'm constantly trying to push the boundaries for myself. I came off Young Woman and the Sea and I edited Paddington in Peru just again to keep those challenges alive and kicking. So, well, yeah, I think the fact that it was this young woman's story, and Joachim and Jeff worked really hard with Jerry to focus in on her, and with Daisy Ridley. I mean, I want to shout out to everyone involved in this film because the cast were amazing, and the fact that Joachim wanted to film on the actual open water in Bulgaria. When I met him, that really chimed with me because I felt there was an authenticity even in the background of the filmmaker wanting to do it like this. And for Daisy, who actually had a little bit of a fear of open water, she conquered that fear and she trained. So when you see her swimming, it feels so real. So I think that's what attracted me, the fact that even the people behind the film, they wanted to just get under the skin of it and do justice to that story in a very truthful way. And filming in open water as well as some, select underwater things in a tank, it just gave me, as a filmmaker I started on Steenbeck, so I've learned my craft editing film. So I have a very sort of textural feel. Even when I'm on the Avid with my mouse, I try and have that organic, intuitive thing. And I think all of us were working on that level. So just following Trudy's story and the magnificent performance of Daisy Ridley.
Yeah, funny story. I did edit on a Steenbeck while in film school, and it was it was quite the experience.
It's a good experience. But
Yeah.
you know what? I keep saying to people on Avid, you can just say if I show the film to the director and then we're going back to review it, I can just click and I can do another cut of the film or a scene. But when you're on Steenbeck and you had to like unpick the film, you did that with great thought and you analyze forensically what were you going to benefit, and you used your imagination and your mind's eye to work out how will that work if I do that. And I try and keep that alive because I sometimes, when you have to rewind a film on 35 mil, it might take 10, 15 minutes to physically rewind. So you have to sit together and talk in a creative way. And I think that's what I always try and do when I'm editing. I try and keep that connectivity with the film and giving space. Sometimes I do my best editing when I'm cycling to work and I'm thinking of how could we collapse that scene or move things around? How can we improve the storytelling?
And how was your collaboration like with the director of the film, Joachim Roning?
You know what? We had so much fun. He is a great guy. Not only is he a great filmmaker, but he's very funny and he's also very open and collaborative. And I think when you work with people who are strong and confident in their own ability, they're very generous as a result, because they're not frightened if you suggest anything. So we were very good. We were sympathetically inclined towards the visuals and how we could do it. And then he was very open to working together. So if I had an idea, he would always watch and listen and have a play. I love sound and music. So even in my early assemblies, I had never worked with any of this team before. So it was really important. Day one of principal photography, I was editing and then sending the cuts to Joachim, Jerry, and Bruckheimer for them to review. So I had a great team. My assistant, Nick Davis, and the second assistant at the time during the shoot was Lottie Gilmore. So I was working with them and sorry, Timmy Caldrick as well, to give everyone their name. And so I would edit very quickly. I would give it to my team and they would start building the sound design. And I used temp music at that time. So it meant that by the end of the day, first day of editing, I had something really strong that I could send to Joachim and Jerry and just give them assurances, because they had never worked with me before, that were we on the right path? And then I was getting lovely feedback from them that they were really liking what they were seeing. But the performances and the cinematography was so beautiful that it was a joy for me to do. And so with Joachim, we worked remotely during the shoot. And then once we finished the shoot, I went to London, he came to London, and then we began together going through the film and I suppose, just interrogating the storytelling and finding ways that we could be more with Trudy. The script was beautiful by Jeff Nathanson and there was a lot in it. So our first cut was like 2 hours, 35 minutes. And we realized it was taking quite a long time to get to the channel. So that's the area that we sort of kept collapsing. So if you look at the film again with a critical eye, you might notice a lot of montage sequences, which have become now my forte. How do you collapse the essence of a scene? So we might have had 3 or 4 scenes in real time, but we were able to just take moments from them, sort of images from them, and make it into a sequence that, if you look at the film again, when Trudy is beginning to rise in her power, we juxtapose it with Meg falling from grace. So her sister was actually a better champion swimmer. And that little sequence was great because in a very effortless way, you could just keep showing Trudy winning. And you could just see Meg, her sister, becoming second place, then third place, then not even placing at all. And in the end, eating ice cream with her boyfriend. So it was that type of visual storytelling. I just loved. I thought that was a good way of keeping the best of everything and being able to collapse it into a montage.
Yeah, these montages are great because you really see a progression in Trudy's arc in the movie.
Yeah.
So how much did the story, or at least how the story was constructed within the edit, change from what we have seen in the finished product? Was there a lot of massive changes from, I guess, the first cut of the movie to the final one?
The changes. So the script was so strong, and I know I'm going to sound probably a bit repetitive because I always say, as editors, we stand on the shoulders of our producers, screenwriters, directors, cast. But the script was so good, and the rushes were so strong. Oscar Fora was our DOP, that it meant that the first cut, it was really good, but it was too long, and there was too many stories with Meg. There was more of Meg's liaison with Chip Anderson and how that fell apart. So from script to screen, with all of us, Chef, Joachim and me, we were forensically interrogating how do we collapse the time? Because we had to get it down to a shorter time length and not lose anything. So one of the biggest structural changes I think that has really that opened up the middle was the making some of those montages to in a more effortless way get to the point where she now becomes a world champion. Her mom sticks, the blue ribbon into the meat. So that was collapsed and sort of rejigged. And then we went from that to her going home and the father wanting her to marry this boy. And what was good about that, I think, by bringing that scene up, it just showed for women, no matter what you achieve, her father still wanted her to marry the nut peddler. And we had a scene there with Burgess. We had more scenes with Chip Anderson, but we removed them. So by bringing that up, it just created a bit of a flow. And then we used Burgess. We moved Burgess later. So when you meet Burgess on the beach, we put that after the failure um, in the France at the Olympics. And that also revealed itself. On paper, it really worked as Jeff had wrote it, but when we just did those two little changes, suddenly the film began to come more into Trudy's story. And it did mean we lost a few scenes with Meg and Chip Anderson, who was great, and also Jenny Weissmuller. But I think those type of things are fun. And Jeff was brilliant because he was quite fearless in saying, if we were saying, could I audition this idea? The guys were like, okay, let's have a look at it. And then we might say, okay, that really works, but actually let's put that back. So I think that's the joy of editing, of just finding you write the script, then when you shoot, it's a new writing of the script, if you like. And then when you edit, it's a third writing of the script. But we were all together being very excited by ideas that, if I saw something, the guys were like, okay, let's have a look at this.
And I think for the audience to be invested in Trudy's journey in swimming the English Channel, which is pretty much the back half of that movie, we have to be also invested into her earlier days as she starts to, become better at swimming. Like I think of the scene where I think it's where she swims against the Australian team. She trails behind. I think she falls. I think she trips down, and then she trails behind, and then she sort of gains momentum. Is there a way that you sort of wanted to sort of rhythmically represent that progression within the edit?
Yes, exactly. So we wanted to basically show that even her coach was saying to her, "Don't get in the way." So John Sullivan, the guy, the American commentator, he was a great foil that was in the script of just constantly telling you where to go. Because the challenge of a swim film, which is interesting to discuss for anyone who likes sporting movies, is when those girls are in the water, all you see is the top of their little heads, the swimming caps. So in the first cut of that, we were really, Joachim and I were saying, how do we make sure that the audience know who's Trudy and who's Meg and who's the Australian? That was one challenge, which is sort of an inbuilt. So O'Sullivan helped us with that. And then I did use split screens at the beginning to keep Trudy late. And then just found the first cut of that, there was actually 8 laps. And then we reduced it to 4. But what we always knew was the moment that she was beginning to kick those feet and the minute that the camera went underwater, that the music would soar. So even in the assembly, we were doing that the music would just soar and the audience would begin to feel like she's going to do it. So when I cut that during the shoot, I sent that to Joachim, and Joachim's told me afterwards he was actually really happy with that. He was able to show that to some of the cast to keep everyone buoyed up because they were freezing in Bulgaria in the open water. And then he brought some of the team in to show them that early assembly, and it just made everyone feel like this could really work, that you felt for this girl, and again in a very effortless way you could follow. The crowd were bored. If you forensically watch that scene again, the crowd are jaded. Some man is asleep. And then gradually, as she begins to swim, the crowd galvanize. And even Meg shouts at her, go, do it. And then that last moment when she just, we extended time to get the Australian is there. She's in the lead. And then we were underwater. So going underwater helped us extend time for the length of the pool. But you felt as an audience, you're like, come on, Trudy. So it was great, but everyone, even the supporting actors, Joachim is great working with actors and supporting actors because everyone was really in the moment and living it as if it was real. So when the Australian person loses, she's smashing that water like she was really frustrated, and you felt that. So in the rushes, I could see that, and I could grab those bits, and it just gave a truthfulness, I think, to the sequence.
Yeah, you mentioned cinematographer Oscar Farua, who's I think a really great cinematographer who knows
Brilliant.
how to work in the sea as well with Jaya Bayona. Also, he's got a I think he's really developed a language of finding a rhythm also to
Yeah.
shooting in the scene, sort of gliding with the character. Did his underwater shots and also shots that see Trudy swim on top of the water, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
find a sort of rhythm with the edit.
I totally agree with you. So, like, Joachim told me something really funny. He watched this film when he was traveling on an airplane, and he watched it without headphones, and he just saw the musicality even in the picture cutting. But that also comes from the rushes. So the rushes have that organic feel to it because of the way they shot it and the way Oscar lights it as well. So I studied directing and cinematography for 4 years before I studied editing. It was the first degree I did. So I love cinematography. So when you see some of those moments and the way he captured something and the light, there's something so beautiful in it that you just know, okay, that, say as an editor, I might have all the rushes. I'm like, okay, that is my first shot in the scene, even if it's in the middle. And I build around that because there's something truthful in there. But I think, yeah, there was rhythm in the way they shot it, the way they performed it, and hopefully in my editing, and then with the music with Amelia as well, and then the sound design with them, Tormod and Board and Luke and Ben. We really worked hard in the mix to make sure that you really felt that visceral thing. So, when she's later in the film, she's swimming through the shallows, and we just used this really high note and no sound. And then when we cut to her lost, we just crashed in with the sound and no music. So that balance of using no sound, no music, and then sound, it just creates a real visceral feel to the audience. And when I watched it on Sunday in LA, the person in front of me, he jumped when we cut to the black, and I was like, that's good. So you felt you were as lost and as disorientated as her.
Well, I
So I
think
love that.
one of the scenes that really showcases this disorientation is when she swims in a field of jellyfish.
Yeah,
We really feel that pain. Like I don't know if you can see my TV in the back, but this is where I watched it in. But like,
the telly.
yeah, but like I could really feel that agonizing pain that she was feeling as she was swimming, and we saw
Yeah.
these, I think, extreme close-ups of those jellyfish, and then her trying to, swim around it. I don't know if you can talk about, working on that scene.
Yes. So that scene, obviously, the jellyfish is all visual effects. So when I was cutting it, obviously there were no jellyfish, and we had put in little placeholders. But again, this is where Daisy Ridley is great because then we had her in for ADR, and we were able to do her breath, and using her breath was a very important thing because when she's screaming, so when I was cutting that scene, even at an early stage, my assistant she was doing the screams for me with her head in a bucket of water. And we were able to place them. So, in the absence of the jellyfish until they arrived, you just needed to feel the torture of that. And cutting back to the family on the boat watching her. So, the screams and the sound came almost first because the jellyfish were one of the last things to come into the film before we locked. But we did have temporary jellyfish. And the guys kept working on that to get the most organic feel of these jellyfish that were like stinging her. But I think, yeah, that was a good challenge. But it came together quite easily because we had to lock that quite quickly in order to hand it over to visual effects for them to build the jellyfish. And that took the craft of making sure that they looked real and they felt scary. So I'm really proud that a lot of people have asked us how we did the jellyfish. So I think that's a big thumbs up for VFX.
Was there a specific contrast that you wanted to showcase? Because the movie does show swimming in a very positive, euphoric light in its opening sections, and then it shows the sort of really dangers and horrors of swimming in the open water, especially in the end where she's completely lost. She doesn't know where she is. Was there this sort of contrast that yourself or Joachim wanted to show in Trudy's
Yeah, I
journey?
think yes, I think we wanted to show just how impossible that swim is because the channel swim, I mean, now in the world today, there are people coming, migrants are trying to cross that treacherous water with huge waves and freezing cold temperatures. So we did really want to show the danger of that so people would actually really understand what she sacrificed and the fact that despite having measles as a child and having a threat to her hearing, she just had to do this. It was in her DNA almost that she had to do this swim. So, yes, we did want to show the importance of I suppose how dangerous it was, and by creating the opening sequence, women were at that time relegated to a little tiny playground, cut off area of the swimming pool, and that was important that the society of that age, they didn't support women swimmers because they thought it might affect their fertility or their aesthetic. So the Jabez Wolf character, Chris Rexton, that was important, that they didn't want them to eat. They wanted them to keep slim. So all of that was part of, if we could show how treacherous it was, the audience would really be rooting for Trudy because she was going against the odds of everything, not only societal, but actually even geographical. This was a terribly dangerous swim when she had no protective clothing. She was in a little woolen swimsuit covered in lanolin and fat, animal fat. So I think that was really important to just get that scope. So the audience were rooting for her. If it was too easy, I mean, as an editor as well, this was another thing that we were very mindful of in the cutting room, how to make sure that things didn't happen too easy. So when she failed the first swim, and when Burgess, Stephen Graham's character, comes in and talks to the family and encourages her to go again, how to cut that in a way that the audience would believe that the father and Meg would even allow her to do it, because she nearly died. So that the rhythms of those are very important. So you have to use those cutaways of the family, so the audience would be in their shoes, and they could also be half wanting her to go home and be safe, and the other half of them wanting her to actually do this and show the world that she could do it. So that was an important sort of dance in the cutting room of how to make sure that the audience were believing in the film and believing in the actions of the people in the film, so things didn't happen too easily.
When Trudy swims the English Channel for the second time, we also cut to her family in the States, getting sort of real-time updates on her situation. I'm wondering, how did you know when to cross-cut to her family, and also to when she reaches the Goodwin Sands, I think,
Yes.
the people also in the beach trying to find her, try to find
Yeah.
a solution to at least point her in the right direction?
Yeah. So that came about again, sort of organically, of just where Jeff is clever is he created, the mother goes to the radio station, and that was a great tapestry for us, that we could get away from the swim, because swimming fatigue for an audience in the cinema is a real thing, particularly with the front call. So we had to find, okay, how do you sustain this swim when she's already been swimming for, I don't know, 45 minutes, 50 minutes in the movie already to get to this point. So that came about quite naturally, because we knew that there was certain sections she had to get through. She had to first of all start swimming without the journalists knowing. Then she was going to be struck by those journalists when they saw her in this bikini, which at that time was breakthrough. They thought it was like nudity, and they could have touched her in the water. And if they touched her in the water, her swim was void. So there was these different challenges that she had. There was how to avoid being touched in the water, how to avoid the jellyfish. Then there was the fog. Then there was the sheer act of how many miles she had to swim. So it actually came back quite organically, that when we felt like it was time to go back to the mom, it just helped us then jump along a little bit. So after we go back to the mom, then we could come for the jellyfish. And after the jellyfish, and her leaky goggles, we could then, another montage that we created of hearing the world speaking about her. So I found all these beautiful shots that we hadn't used, and I was able to sort of repurpose them to just create this vignette, and seeing her Epi, her coach, on her own, drinking wine in New York, willing her to kick her feet. And so it happened quite naturally, and quite quickly, because that section of the film, there is a process that she had to get through until she got to the shallows. There was more opportunity to rejuggle in the earlier part of the film, but in this part of the film, it was more collapsing and making sure that we stayed long enough and not too long. And then obviously the mom's necklace, that was a key emotional point, because Jeanette Haim, who stars as the mom, her and Kim, the father actor, they were incredible. And the sadness of that she had a twin sister who had drowned, and she was so scared. It meant that by having that scene earlier, it really paid off in the radio station when she fears her daughter is lost, and she just holds the necklace. And again, it's a very simple thing. It's 2 shots, but that's all we needed to allow the audience remember.
And is there something that you would say as an editor was the most rewarding aspect of working on this film?
Well, can I say a couple of things? I'm saying, okay, working with the guys, definitely. But bringing a story to life that people wouldn't have known about. I feel quite proud of that. I feel like it's something important, and I'm very happy and privileged that they asked me to join them on this film, because I think when I read the script, I absolutely wanted to get involved. And then when I met Jerry and Joachim on the meeting, I just was like praying that they asked me to edit it, because I felt it was the right fit for me. And then what I am proud about is, I think, thanks to all, the acting and Daisy, again, I do want to shout out to Daisy, to be able to follow Trudy and give her that subjectivity and the closeness to the audience. And that was, as an editor, that was something that I kept trying to track. Like I did a Trudy pass. So again, if there are editors watching, doing a pass of an audience, it's really important for the audience. So a Trudy pass, a Mother pass, a Jabez Wolf. So I think that when using sound and music and finding the balance of that, so that when she is lost in the Goodwin Sands, that I could do this sort of elliptical style of editing, that it was disconcerting and chaos. And glimpsing, if you look at it again, like some of the shots are about 4 frames where you glimpse a bit of her hand or her leg or her foot. And then eventually when she's taken off the goggles and you feel like she's given up hope, that all felt like truthful. And as a result, by using sound and using her breath and removing music, it just made you feel that you were there with her. So then when she finally is popping up and you're like, turn around, look at the fires, they're behind you. I'm so proud of that. And when I sit in a cinema and I feel the audience reacting to that, I feel really proud of that. And the other thing was, when she touched the sand, Joachim always called that, the walking on the moon moment. And we knew that that had to be silent again. So that play with the music stops as she touches the sand and stands. And then the music comes back, this beautiful, triumphant score that Amelia had created. That it just felt the power of the sound design and in the editing. And we were doing that and then working with the composer and all coming together to just find that the importance of not having music throughout, but actually having music when you really needed it.
Awesome. Well, it was really great talking today, Una, on Young Woman and the Sea. Congratulations once
Thank you.
again. The film is absolutely incredible, and your work in this film is really great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for interviewing me.
Yeah, well, I did not know that you were working on Paddington in Peru. I know a couple of friends in the UK that have already seen the movie. I cannot wait to see it when it comes out here. Wishing you
Thank
all the
you.
best on that movie, and hope that you have a very good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. And you too.
Thank you. Bye bye.
See you soon again.